Well, hello there, and welcome to another tank review. I'm Corny Swiss, and today we'll be looking at the M4A3E2 76, the Rank 4 5.7 American heavy tank. As with all reviews, if there's something in particular you want to see, like the realistic gameplay or the simulator gameplay, or maybe just the final opinion, those various parts of the review are timestamped down below in the description, so feel free to click on what you want to watch and go on your merry way. But if you want to hear the garage portion of this review, let's get started. So, the Sherman Jumbo, as this thing is named and sort of nicknamed, the M4A3E2 Jumbo, I call it the Jumbo, is basically an M4 Sherman with lots of extra armor. And that's really the key difference between this Sherman variant and the other ones. It's, as the name in War Thunder suggests, it's an assault tank. Only about 250 or so of these tanks were built, and they varied between the long-barreled 76mm gun and the shorter-barreled 75mm gun, which is typical on Shermans generally. However, we're going to be discussing the longer-barreled 76mm gun. It's a 5.7 battle rating, which means that this tank can see up to Tiger IIHs, since the Tiger IIH recently had its battle rating brought down by 0.3. This tank generally will run into Tigers and Panthers and scary things like that, and initially I thought this tank wouldn't do that well. It's a 76mm gun, and I mean the longer barreled 76mm guns at a 5.0 battle rating, in my opinion, don't deal with Tigers tremendously well. So why would this be any different? Well, it is different, and we're going to talk about why. But first, let's go through some of the speed maneuverability aspects of this tank. It's a 37.8 ton machine. It's heavier than the other Shermans, but that's because it has a whole bunch of extra armor on it. It also has a beefier engine, 100 horsepower more and 200 more RPM in the engine. Still has a 35 km/h top speed. And realistically, it won't do much more than that. The Shermans as a whole aren't that quick, but they are good in terms of getting to that speed and maintaining that speed. They're generally not the fastest tanks, but they sure can get where you want to go, and that's what's important. Maximum inclination 41 degrees, 24 degrees per second turret rotation speed. That's common amongst all Shermans. Vertical guidance 10 degrees of gun depression, 25 degrees of elevation. As far as I can tell, all the American tanks have great gun handling in terms of depression and elevation. So it's no surprise that the Jumbo would be the same way. Now the armor is where this thing really shines when compared to other Shermans, in my opinion. So let's bring up the little armor profile. It says that the hull armor is 101 at the front. That's not entirely true, and we'll see why. And let me just line up this so we can have accurate gauges on armor. When you mouse over it, it's 38.1 millimeters thick. Well, that's not true, because there's actually another plate behind that that's 63.5 millimeters thick. The combination of those two thicknesses is where you get that 101 millimeters of armor. However, the bottom plate is sloped back at about 40-something degrees. It's hard to tell because it's hidden by the machine gun port. But you can estimate that it's probably sloped back at 47 degrees, and this sloped back at 47 degrees is 50.1 millimeters of armor. So if we find a spot where this is sloped back at around 47 degrees, let's go with 49 for example, the bottom plate is 142 millimeters thick. So you combine those, and that's a little under 200 millimeters of armor if you combine the thicknesses of the two plates and the sloping. It's pretty good. This plate here is 114.3 millimeters thick, and it's basically down here it's 150, but that's also connecting with this bit right here, which is 139.7 millimeters thick. So basically the armor on the lower part of the Sherman ranges from 156 all the way up to well over 200, about 209 or so. This middle bit here, 139.7, is almost as advertised. On the upper parts it's close to 160, in the middle it's 140. That's basically what it's advertised, and all the way down to about 150 before you go into the bottom plate, which is the same 114.3 millimeters thickness, and starts at about 155 and goes all the way down until unpenetrable ranges. What does this mean for the profile, the front profile of the hull? It means the upper plate is very thick. This part of the tank, this middle section, is very thick. This bit is thick. It's not as thick as, it's effectively the thickest armor in terms of just pure plate. However, it's not as sloped as much, but it is a small target and it is angled and sloped and weird. If your shell goes a little high, you're going to hit this bit, which is thicker effectively thanks to sloping, and you just don't want to shoot this part of the tank because these two plates combined make this very, very durable. The front of this tank, especially on the hull, is very durable. You have to watch out for some trouble points right here on the corners because that's where the ammo racks are stored. But all in all, the front armor of this tank, let's compare it to, say, a Tiger, is effectively better than the Tiger tank's armor, in my opinion. And you'll see in gameplay that this tank deals with Tigers very well, especially even at close ranges, and even at long ranges too. It just kills Tigers. That's basically what you're going to get out of some of these replays. Now the front of the turret, you have the gun mantlet, which is about 178 millimeters thick, and it is as advertised, right? You have this sloped bit at the top, but that's, I mean, that's, if you hit that, you weren't going to do anything anyway. So about 178 millimeters all around this gun mantlet. The cheeks of the turret are 152.4 millimeters thick, but that means that coming off this gun mantlet, they're well over 200 millimeters thick, right? 232 right off the gun mantlet, and obviously increases as you go out, and that's on both sides. So the turret is really, really tough, like extremely tough. You also have this plate down here that protects the right below the gun mantlet, which is 152.4 millimeters thick, and that just helps make the front of this turret extremely durable. The roof of the tank is technically kind of a weak spot, 25.4 millimeters. Even if it's sloped at 63 degrees, it's only 61 millimeters. However, that is a really bad, tough shot. I'd be very surprised if you're able to knock these tanks out with a shot like that. I think you'd need to be above them a little bit to get a chance to shoot down on this. Because even though it is very thin, it is sloped back really hard. Which means you're going to need some serious, either some very serious kinetic energy or a height advantage to pump a shell right through there. Right? Because you'll see that sloping is just incredible. Right, the side of the tank, this is where the Sherman Jumbo also really, in my opinion, makes its money. 76.2 millimeter side armor. That's pretty good. KV-1 has 75, right? This tank has more side armor than KV-1. And KV-1s can see Tigers as well, and a well-angled KV-1 is almost impregnable against some Tiger until they get lucky. Side of the turret, 152.4 millimeters. It's pretty good. The side of the turret is really, really tough. And out the back, I mean, it's the rear of the tank, but the turret is still 152 millimeters thick, and obviously the rear of the tank is pretty paper. 38.1, 38.1, you get the picture. The turret is extremely well armored all the way around. The sides are interesting because most Shermans can't benefit from angling that much because of how weak the side armor is. It's very thin. This Sherman, on the other hand, can do a lot with angling. Let's set up an angle here. That's a pretty hefty angle, right? The side armor is over 180 millimeters thick, well, 170 at its weakest, all the way down to a billion. The front of this plate, at its weakest, is around 58 or so, 47 degrees sloped back. And this plate is, these two plates will basically be the same right here, so you don't really lose armor over here. However, the rest of this becomes thicker, which is really, really good. This plate becomes basically unpenetrable to most guns. The guns this tank would see. This plate as well, very difficult shot. The angling is really going to help, and obviously this plate is impossible. So when it's angled, this tank maintains its strength from the front and gains the ability to use that side armor and make the majority of the tank, except for on like this line where the armor is about the same as it is if you're facing straight on, like here, right? This is about 50 something. You angle this like this. This is a little over 50, it's about 59, 60. So you do gain some benefit there, but it's not tremendous. Over here, though, I mean, we start seeing some real benefit. So this tank can be angled very effectively from either side. It really doesn't matter. The key is you don't want to over angle and show too much of this side armor, because then, like, if you do angle something like this, I mean, obviously they're going to penetrate that all day long. It's only 114. I think a Tiger at close range could easily deal with that. So the Jumbo is prone to being angled, and the front of the tank is very durable. The side of the tank, the hull isn't that good straight on from the side, but the turret is very durable. From front, side, and rear, the turret is very important. And with that 10 degrees of gun depression, you can get this thing hull down and be a god. The only time I've been knocked out in this tank when I was hull down was by a Tiger 2H, who I'm pretty sure just put a round of APCR clean through my gun mantlet and nuked my crew. It might have been AP, but it must have been at close range, because it just went clean through my gun mantlet, which I guess could have been AP if fired at close to medium range, and if he got lucky. So the armor is very good, alright, and it maintains Sherman-esque mobility. It's a little more sluggish, but that's because it weighs about 7 tons more, right? But the armor profile of this tank is really, really good in my opinion. Now let's talk about the gun. The gun, with my mediocre crew, because honestly I just didn't have enough points saved up. We can go to my loader. See, I don't have very many points saved up on my guys yet. Oop, it's going to take forever to process because I just tried to spend a few more points. Hopefully it doesn't take too long. It is annoying when things like this happen, isn't it? I just want to show what's happening with my tank. There it goes. Alright. With a mediocre crew, well, mediocre to poor, 10.5 second reloading rate, not bad. It's pretty good. That's similar to Panthers and Tigers. Carries 71 rounds of ammunition, has a 30mm machine gun with 5,250 rounds of ammunition. 30mm doesn't mean a whole lot. I use it to distract people more often than not. But let's talk about the ammo choices, because you have 3. The 2 default ammunition choices. You get the M62, which is the common shell for the 76mm gun. It's the one they all start out with. 118mm at 10 meters, 101 at 500, 92 at 1500, 2000 or 72 at 2000. Yeah, imagine 2000mm penetration. That'd be a lot. 792 meters per second muzzle velocity. 7 kilograms. It's not a particularly big shell. Alright. This shell, in my opinion, only can deal with most threats at close range, unless you catch them from the side. If you catch a Tiger from the side or a Panther from the side, you can deal with them, I mean, a Tiger almost out to 2,000 meters, a Panther beyond 2,000 meters, if you get the side of their hull. However, that's very uncommon. You have to be at close to semi-medium range to deal with the front of those tanks effectively with this shell. HE, I've never fired it, and I don't think you should either. It's a 5.8 kilogram shell, just doesn't pack the punch. And actually, interesting enough, has a higher muzzle velocity than the AP shell by about 8 meters per second. So this shell, you use it to grind out the other shells. The M79 shot, this is where most 76mm guns stop. 6.8 kilogram shell, so it's only slightly lighter than the standard AP, which is 7 kilograms. Same muzzle velocity, and the penetration goes up about 10. You have 128 at 10 meters, 121 at 500 meters, 85 at 1500, and 62 at 2000. So the penetration actually falls off maybe a little harder when you get to extreme ranges, but the penetration out to 1,000 meters is better. So that means you can push that effective engagement range on Tigers back a little bit farther, but not a whole lot. You're still going to struggle and really need to place your shots well to deal with the front of Tigers. But then we come down to the M93 shot, and this is what I primarily use on this tank. It's APCR, which has its drawbacks and has its benefits. 4.3 kilogram shell. The weight of the shell isn't that much different than the other shells, which is kind of a bonus. And I think I'll explain more of that when during the replays probably. But it means that when the shell hits something, it seems like lighter APCR shells have a greater chance of fragmenting, but just by nature, and just having little bits of themselves fly in general weird directions. I don't know if that's 100% right or not, but it seems to follow that if you lighter APCR shells fragment when they hit targets rather than the larger caliber HE shell or APCR shells that have more kinetic energy hold together more, which can be a good and bad thing. At 10 meters, you have 185 millimeters penetration, 178 at 500, 133 at 1500, and 110 at 2000 meters. The importance of that is now you can engage a tiger at just about any range he wants to engage you at. This APCR shell is really, really potent. All right, 1036 meters per second muzzle velocity. It means this shell is very easy to get on target. And the gun itself doesn't seem to deviate that much. It's a very accurate gun as far as I can tell. I've never had any issues with it. But this means the front of a Tiger is not a problem for this tank firing this round out to most ranges that you would ever expect. I think the longest range you'll probably engage a target at would be 1500 meters. If we're going to call it a very, I guess, Kursk-esque average. 133 millimeters penetration. That's enough. That's usable. And at close range, you're going to gut them like, just fish. I've had shells that I fire into a Tiger, go all the way through his crew compartment, knock out his driver and loader or something like that, or some combination of crew, and then set him on fire. And you'll just burn him out because the next shell you just send right through to the back of the tank, and it just knocks him just right out because you just burn him. So the M93 shot is what I use a majority of the time. In fact, I only load that round. It has its drawbacks. Primarily when you're dealing with maybe lightly armored tanks like, I don't know, the side of a Panther. If you don't, you need to have a greater understanding of where ammo racks and important components are, because the APCR shell isn't going to give you that that help of it bursting inside the tank like the M62 shot would. So you have to be more precise where you hit tanks. However, I think it makes up for the fact that it can penetrate the front of these tanks, and I just always prefer to have that loaded. And it's adequate enough for dealing with the side of tanks. Just like I said, remember where ammo rack locations are and things like that. You're going to see in replays where I just shoot at the ammo racks on the side of a Tiger and he just explodes, because this shell is powerful enough to deal with a direct hit to the ammo rack will knock the tank out. There's some APCR shells where it won't, but this one certainly will. So as far as ammunition goes, the standard AP is not great. It's slightly below adequate. Matter of fact, I would say at close range it's adequate. Outside of close range, not really. HE shell, I've never used it, so I mean, take that as you will. M79 shot is adequate. M93 shot, is the best shell on this tank in my opinion, and it's what I use primarily, and I've had good success with it, so I'm not going to stop anytime soon. It is a little pricey, but I've still turned profit on every game, so take that as you will. So what's all this mean? Well, actually, first, before I do an overview, let's look at the layout, because I always forget to do the layout, and I really shouldn't. It's sort of your standard Sherman layout, right? Your loader sits on the right part of the tank, you have the gunner sitting on the left, commander behind him, driver in the front, machine gunner in the front. And as with most Shermans, the ammo rack locations are in the front right and front left of the hull, and down below in between these sections of track. And interesting enough, around the turret ring as well, right here. You will notice that the ammo is located behind the thickest armor from the front. It's very difficult to set those things off from the front. Now the rear of the tank is basically one giant fire waiting to happen, but that's okay because it's also behind this thick armor, and if you're getting hit in the side, you probably toast anyway. But at least the fire things that will cause fire are back here and fairly well protected. Transmission's in the front, which is a little bit annoying, but most of the time that's not what people are shooting at. I've found that people are generally shooting at the gun mantlet or at the shoulders here trying to get this ammo. I have been knocked out once by a Panther. I believe it was, I forgot which variant it was, but it had, I'm pretty sure it had APCR, and it got a shell through here and it set off my ammo rack, which obviously knocked out the tank. I think I was angled something like this. Not very much, but angled something like this, and he put one right through there and cooked off that ammo rack. So that's a little unfortunate. But in terms of layout, it's fairly standard for Shermans. The gunner sits to the left, the driver sits to the right. So if you're shooting at this thing and you need to disable it from the front, I would say try and shoot it through the gun mantlet if you really need to. If you just want to keep him from moving, try and shoot out the driver. And you can get the driver by shooting through this part, through the transmission, but like I said, the front of this tank is very well armored. Might not be the best life choice. So overall, in terms of speed, this tank's a little more sluggish than the other Shermans, but it's sluggish for good reasons, and I'm okay that it's sluggish, because from the front, this thing is very well armored. It deals with Tigers very effectively, and at a 5.7 battle rating, what are you going to see majority of? Tigers. Especially when there's a lot of people online and a lot of people playing, you're going to see a lot of Tigers and a lot of Panthers. Now, this gun can be effective with the M93 shot against Tiger IIHs. However, they're a little more tricky because of how their armor is sloped and things like that. And their gun doesn't really have an issue with the front of the jumbo. So when I run into Tiger IIHs, I try and just stay hull down and take shots of opportunity. I play this tank like a medium against 6.7 battle rating tanks. Against 5.7 battle ratings tanks like Tigers, I use this thing as more of the assault tank, more of the heavy tank, and generally try and sit on the back slope a little bit and shoot into them and push them back very aggressively. And you'll see that in one of the replays in particular. The gun is very good. I really like the gun. It's accurate. The M93 shot makes life really easy. The other two shots are a little bit of a pain, but if you are aware of the fact that they're not great, then you can play around that and you can make this tank work. But I would rush the M93 shot as quick as possible just to make your life easier. So on the whole, it's a very solid tank. Very, very solid tank. But let's go to the replay, shall we? So here we are on a realistic battle on Carpathians. And I'm driving the Jumbo with the Long 76. Now the mantra of this game is not one step backwards, even though we're all American tanks. The team, myself included, are going to take a very aggressive stance this game, and we are generally going to drive forward and go directly at the enemy. Partly because the Shermans are very strong from the front, especially when not met with larger caliber guns, but also because honestly the Jumbo can do that, and there's a few Jumbos in this game. Now we have some Walker Bulldogs, we have some Jumbos, we have an M6 running around, and I don't know what was happening with the Walker Bulldog in front of me, but he when I was playing, he was actually, I don't know, his gun was like glitching or something. His turret wasn't moving, but his gun was. It was a little weird. Alright, so the enemy have kind of determined what our first step is. There's a Panzer 470 over there, and he wants some good news. Now myself, an M6, and I believe a T-34-85 have stopped to deal with him. And because we're already down here and the enemy, and our team are already pushing up around the high road, myself, the M36, and the T-34-85 are going to continue pushing on the lower side. Now we've come across a whole slew of enemies. We have a Panther, a Tiger, and I believe a second Panther. So at least 3 of them here. One of them is definitely a Tiger. Yep, 2 Panthers and a Tiger. Now I decided to prioritize the Tiger on account of it being, I don't know. I was still testing this gun out. I wanted to be sure that, well, I was primarily testing this M93 shot, and the Tiger's the closest target, and also I feel the best about being able to disable him like that. Just got both of his drives, so he's kind of cooked at this point. Notice how every time I fire, I start moving forward. The goal is, and there's a shot that just gutted the tank. Knocked out his driver, went all the way back and damaged his engine, resulting in a fire, and he gets obliterated by, I believe, another jumbo. Then I switch my fire to the Panther, but notice how I'm continually moving forward. I'm keeping the pressure up. My first shell got his gunner, which means he will probably get the next shell off. My next shell didn't really do a whole lot to him, but I'm going to keep moving forward, keep pressing the attack, because I do have allies around me, which means he may not be able to shoot at me. Now this Panther is pretty much stuffed. He's damaged, his crew is wounded, and we're just going to keep slamming it home, and there we go. The final shot there goes right through his gun mantle and knocks him out. So myself, the M6, and this ZSU-37, I believe, are just going to keep pushing forward. We've dealt with 2 Panthers and a Tiger down on this flank, and our teammates have run into opposition on the higher road, but they're slowly pushing forward and driving them out. So now we're going to come around on the lower side of this hill and start making our push towards their spawn. And the enemy have respawned. There are a few of them over here. But what's going to be important is if we can keep closing the distance, we can keep putting more pressure on them and use our numbers to just simply overwhelm. When we get to a certain range, none of us are going to be able to miss, and there's more of us than there are of them. I mean, we've knocked out at least 1 Tiger who probably won't be respawning. But our teammates have taken the hill aggressively and are going to start flanking down across from the top of the hill. Myself, another Sherman, the M6, and the T-34-85 are going to continue to push across this field. Well, like I said, the goal is to get close. And this flak truck is getting quite a bit of the good news, that's for sure. He's going to survive a little longer, but Panzer IV-H, don't know where that shot went. But I want to get another shot off before I jump down in this ditch. And I think I might actually just sit here. My cannon barrel was damaged. It's a little unfortunate. There we go, shell right through the gun mantlet of the Panzer IV. And see, here you can see I'm angling a little bit to just give me that extra bit of survivability. I don't necessarily need it at this range against these opponents, but it's never a bad thing to keep in habit. But now my team have decided to move forward a little bit more, so I need to keep up with the pack and keep giving support and being a juicy target that these tanks probably can't deal with at this range. Panzer 470, unlucky there. The sloping kind of saved him. And I'm just using the machine guns as a harassing tool while I reload. But the enemy have sort of backed up down the hill, so we need to keep pressing the issue. There's a Panzer 470. Boom, first shot got his driver. But just keep moving forward, keep applying pressure. When the gun's loaded, maybe take a little bit of a stop to fire another shell. But my goal isn't to ever stay in one position. I want to keep moving. Knock out the Panzer IV, is that the J one? I think so. But now I've caught up with our main push here. And we're in the enemy spawn at this point. We've completely overwhelmed them and pushed across an open field to begin delivering the coup de grace in their own spawn. M6 coming in hot, stops it for a second there to shoot the Panzer IV, or Jagdpanzer, whatever it is, Panzer IV. I was worried right here that the AAA would light me up, but it ended up not being an issue. The most dangerous tank here, though, is the Panzer 470. All the other tanks we can deal with. And now he's knocked out. And the Whirlwind is shooting the back of my turret, which, like we already discussed, is 150mm thick. Not the best life choice. I'm trying to use the machine gun just to kill his crew or something like that, but he is being very difficult. So we are going to have to put him out of his misery. I did get a lot of assists this game. I didn't get many kills of my own, but I did get many assists, which is fine. Assists are worth something too. Light that guy on fire. Oh, Panzer IV-H now. He actually got my turret drives, which, you know, is a little unfortunate. He got a side shot into me. But from the front, he really has no chance. And I believe he's still spawn protected, which is a little annoying. But I'm just going to sit here, soak up the punishment. I really am not worried about him penetrating me. Keep spamming away, and he gets knocked out. So now I'm going to stop and repair. But let's take stock of what's happened while we were poking around in their spawn and having a little bit of fun. The enemy have completely lost control of the map. I mean, when you're in the enemy spawn, that usually indicates that the enemy have lost control of everything. We're capping their base. The secondary objective cap is no one's going for it because we really don't need to. And we're sort of just in here cleaning up. They really have nowhere to go, but that's one playstyle this tank really excels at. Going forward, moving in between shots, and keeping that frontal armor facing the enemy, and really just causing problems. This tank from the front gives German tanks just big issues. Now, later German tanks like the Tiger II-H, the later Panthers with APCR, they're going to be able to deal with you at normal ranges. And you can kind of see what I'm talking about on the right part of the front of my hull where those black marks were. That was people trying to set off the ammo rack, but they were unable to get the shell through there because the armor's too thick. Now we're going to take some pot shots at this plane because I do believe he's the last enemy around. But that fight is kind of an indication of what this tank is really meant to do against maybe equal to lesser competition. Just go forward. Don't dilly-dally about flanking. Just go forward. Let the Bulldogs, Walker Bulldogs, flank. Your job is to take the hits, and you have the tools to do so. This tank is extremely durable from the front, and the gun can gut every tank it sees, outside of some cases like the Tiger II-H at range, in which case you gotta aim a little bit more, but it's still a very effective tank. And when a 5.7 rating is near the top or is very average in a game, just go for it. You know, don't be dumb or arrogant, but just go in there. Stick with your team, advance with your team, and you're going to let loose a world of hurt on the enemy. All right, all the Shermans really benefit from being with your team. It's just a really good idea, you know. A lot of assists that game, though. Oh well. Well, let's move on to the next replay, shall we? So when I set out to get replays, I wasn't really planning on having two from the same map. I kind of want to mix it up. So don't worry, the third replay is a realistic battle, and it's on Ash River. But the simulator battle took place on Carpathians. And this is more a testament to how durable this tank is from the front when you are quote-unquote top tier, meaning that your opponents are generally 5.7 battle rating or 6.0 battle rating machines. Myself, a Walker Bulldog, a couple other tanks, we're going to push up over here because it's a single cap conquest mode, and the cap is on top of this hill here. Now, I had a real decision right here. I could have chosen to go up the hill with the Bulldogs and duke it out to control the cap circle and then push forward. I made the decision that I was too slow. The Bulldogs were going to get there well before me, and it was entirely likely they would get there long before the enemy. I do believe I'm faster than some of the enemy, so I decided to come around this road and flank the entire enemy push up the hill. I was thinking that maybe I'll get some nice flank shots, it'll be really good. And that's usually my strategy in this game mode on this map, and somehow the enemy got there first. A little confusing. But our Bulldogs are getting there, and they're going to start delivering some good news. Now I come around this corner, And the first thing I met with is a Porsche Tiger. Now, I didn't immediately recognize that this was a Porsche Tiger. I thought it was just a Tiger. So I was going to go for the classic front plate penetration and just gut the thing. But the Porsche Tiger has a very, very thick front plate that I really have no business being able to penetrate. We're both opening up on each other, firing as the gun reloads. But he has a distinct disadvantage of having the same gun as a Tiger, which I have no fear of in this tank from the front. So I go for his gun, knock out his gun, get up right up and close so I can see him. For some reason he's still able to fire the gun. Put one right through the gun mantlet, which is the same thickness, got his gunner, got his commander. And now I'm just going to line up again, give him another shell right through the other side of the turret, get his loader, and this guy is completely stuffed. He gets set on fire by another tank, but I'm going to send another shell right through the face of his turret and knock him out. So that Porsche Tiger literally did nothing to me, and we unleashed a world of hurt on him. The enemy have somehow taken control of the cap, so it's become even more important that I move up and start affecting the outcome of the battle to take the hill. Now I start taking hits here, and this is why I wanted to include this replay. The pure amount of punishment that this tank is going to take is really astounding, given that it's a Sherman. There's a Panther. I attempted to shoot out his gun or put one through the gun mantlet, but it went a little higher than I wanted it. Poor aiming on my part. But I'm going to continue to back up, keep these enemies in front of me. I don't want to have a situation where they're able to flank me very easily. Now the artillery there doesn't help because it obscures my view. But there's a shell right through the front plate of the Tiger. His return shell does absolutely nothing. And the Tiger's next shell bounced harmlessly off my gun mantlet. My next shell I put through the side of the Panther's turret and knocked out his gun breech. I felt like disabling the Panther was more important because I've been knocked out by Panthers but not by Tigers. My next shell I put right through the other side of the front plate and nail his machine gunner and also damage his horizontal drive. Both of these tanks have to back up now. Set the Panther on fire. I was going for an ammo rack, but I missed the ammo rack and it hit his, what's it called? Engine. First shell into that Tiger goes through, gets his driver, gets one of his other crew members and another part of his tank. I couldn't see very in how fast that happened. I believe his horizontal drive based on him not moving the turret. But you see what I mean is I'm just pumping these shells clean through the angled front plate of that Tiger. And as long as I can keep my front to him, I have no fear of his gun. The issue I'm having is that there's lots and lots of threats all around me, and that's going to become a serious issue for me. But you'll also notice that we have a lot of tanks streaming in behind me to up that route into the cap circle, and I'm single-handedly, well not single-handedly, but my being here, causing all these problems, forcing these tanks to stop and repair, is making it so that they can't push any farther up the hill. Oh, and here's a Panther that actually gets a very sneaky shot into me, which was a little unfortunate. He got my gunner. But I'm going to angle for him, try and give him as hard a shot as possible. Got my gun back, and he got my cannon barrel there, and I get knocked out by a Tiger from the side. A little unfortunate, but you'll notice that our tickets have been counting down this entire time. However, our team have just moved into the cap circle. Now, I didn't win this game, the team did, but my being there certainly helped. And the reason is that me being there, I disabled a Panther, knocked out a Porsche Tiger, disabled a Panther, disabled 2 Tigers, forced them to stop and repair, and occupied probably 5 tanks of the enemy's team. There aren't that many tanks on both teams in this game. right? So a very good portion were occupied with trying to kill my jumbo. And that's where this tank really shines, is just being a tough nut to crack. And that's why I wanted to show this replay for this review, because you really got a sense of how the armor is very effective from the front, even at close range against Panthers and Tigers, which this tank will primarily see on account of them being at the same battle rate. Now what's happened is our teammates have captured the zone and have started to push forward off the hill and eliminate those damaged tanks that were diverted to attempt to knock me out. Also, something I like about War Thunder is that taking a ton of hits is pretty well rewarded. I'm sitting first on the team, and I don't believe I only killed one tank, I think. I really didn't kill many tanks. I'm going to rack up some assists here. But killing tanks, I would say I more or less got unlucky with some of these shells. The M93 shot does kill tanks. Sometimes not a one shot, but usually if you aim well, it's no problem at all. I've killed Tigers at 1,000 meters in one hit. You know, it's just the RNG about War Thunder, how the shell goes in, where the shell actually hits, things like that. But the M93 shot is really, really effective, and you'll notice in both of the previous replays that's all I fired. And it's worked out pretty well, I'd say. But I'm rushing back over here. I don't want to go up the hill because that'll take me forever, so I'm basically just retracing my steps. I'm going to run into the corpse of that Porsche Tiger again. I'm going to shoot it up a little bit. But I guess the key thing to take away from this replay is the armor on this tank can and will save you. But if I was playing optimally right there, I probably would have been higher up on the hill so that they couldn't flank me as easily. But I think if I'd had maybe one or two tanks with me, we could have easily beaten back that whole assault and won the game from there, assuming there was enough tanks to take the cap. I wasn't quite aware of how much fighting went on the actual hill while I was sitting over there. But there's a Panther over here. He's about maybe 800 meters or so. Trying to go for a, there we go. Trying to go for a turret shot. And he gets knocked out. We get hooked up with a little bit of an assist there. Now we're just going to charge on to victory now. The thing about this tank, just to remember, don't be scared of Tigers and Panthers. Meet them head on and just plant them through the points of the tank that you know vital components are in. For example, the driver, the gunner, even knock out the gun barrel. Just keep doing that and you'll be fine. Now we're going to skip ahead a little bit just to the after battle screen, just because I hate it when this happens and you get stuck in this waiting for results screen. But I guess we've waited through most of it, so there's no point stopping now. Happens every once in a while. I think it's just an internet thing. But anyway. So I finished first on the team, and that was primarily due to the fact that I took a buttload of punishment on that hill. So anyway, that was sort of the armor demonstration, I guess. Let's move on to the next replay, shall we? So here's the final replay for the Jumbo review. Now, the main reason I went, because I would have been fine uploading those previous two clips and saying that those were the clips for the review, but I just hated the fact that they were both on the same map. So I thought I'd do a little work on the Ash River map, maybe get a different perspective, and realistic battle's pretty fun, so why not take out some realistic tanks. What I'm going to do here is it's a domination game mode, so there's 3 cap circles, and I've decided that I'm going to put most of my effort towards A like I normally do. I'm going to come up over here and get on this ridge and try and use my gun depression to affect the outcome of this game. Now the enemy do have some higher battle rating tanks. You're going to see a Jagdpanther, the premium version of the Jagdpanther. Going to see a couple different Panther variants, Tiger 2P, all kinds of good stuff in this game. But there's a Tiger 1. And it was kind of lucky, but I have a general idea of the anatomy of a tiger. And my first shot goes through and does some serious damage, knocks him out. But in the greater form of the battle, we've actually captured the center cap zone, and we're doing okay in trying to cap this one. One tiger down. Here's a panther. Little bit of an iffy shot. The front of his turret was pretty well angled, and even though the shell penetrated, it just went into the roof of the tank rather than causing any serious damage. Started to back up from this guy, but then I realized, what am I doing? I'm a jumbo. I have nothing to fear. Next shot gets his commander, and I'm basically just going to keep the pressure on this guy. Keep pounding him. I'm trying to get his gunner, but the gunner is actually sitting, I believe, on the other side. But IS-2 does him in good. And now we're going to keep pushing over this hill, and there's a Tiger 2P. Now my first shot penetrates the base of his turret ring and goes through, gets his horizontal drive, and gets a couple crew members. Now you'll notice that the APCR shell actually fragmented pretty good right there, and that was primarily to do with the fact that it hit relatively heavy armor. And right there I just took a shell from the premium Yak Panther, most likely an AP shell, but I took it square in the face. And that's what really makes me like this tank, is the fact that even when I face stiffer competition and these longer 88mm guns, this tank doesn't flinch. I'm taking 0 damage from this guy. He's just messing up my paint, which is fine. I'll give him a little paint if he will just die. But it is a Yak Panther. It's very tough. Normally you want AP to deal with Yak Panthers because APCR has this thing about not getting normalization the same way as AP does. So AP will generally stick harder to the surface of the sloped armor, whereas APCR doesn't stick as easy. But here's a Tiger 2P down here, and he's a little sour. Right through the side of the turret. Got his crew members, dealt with him nice and easy. Now the Yak Panther over there, a little bit of an issue. He's backed himself into quite a little corner there, but he's flanked on, well, he's being attacked from 3 sides. The AI is taking shots at me, and an IS-2 eventually knocks him right out. And now we're going to get a Ostwind, is that how you say it? I don't know, it's German. That thing, you know what that is. First shot gets his horizontal drive thanks to some ricocheting fragments. Very lightly armored tanks give the M93 shot some issues, but on the average, I think it's just the better shell on this tank. If I had a couple rounds of AP, I would have loaded him right here and just dealt with this guy. But that shot gutted him all the way to his engine, and he's burning now. So, ripping pepperoni. He's got just too much armor on the front of his turret there. I can't quite use the machine gun to knock him out, but eventually he dies. And there we go, an IS-2 just knocked out another Panther who's coming over here. So the IS-2s are going to push into the this enemy spawn. That's fine. I don't really want to go over there. I'd much rather be over here, sort of out of the way, taking pot shots at enemy tanks over here, because there are a few over here. And if there are more higher tier tanks like Tiger 8, Tiger 2Hs and things like that, I'd much rather have a little more distance between me and them and sort of give my armor the advantage. But there's a Panther G over there, and he's actually in a pretty good position there. First shot hits his gun directly in the barrel. It's a little lucky. I wanted to send it through his gun mantlet. Next shot hits the top edge of his gun mantlet. That's not going to penetrate. The sloping is just too much. But we're going to keep hammering on this guy, because honestly I just don't know where the enemy team are. Next shot goes through the roof of his tank. Sometimes the issue with this gun is it's too accurate. The APCR, that shell nails his cannon breech, and he's going to start backing up and kind of get out of dodge. Well, for a moment until the rest of the team goes in there and chases him down. Now we go, another shot that hit his turret and penetrated. It would have been nice if he was a little farther up so I could start sort of looping these into his ammo rack. But at this range, I'm not sure the other shells would have gotten the job done. I'm pretty sure the M93 shell is the only one I would have been able to use that could have done these things. But he's the only enemy tank. There are a couple heavy tanks down there. And eventually I'm going to make the decision that I should get off this ridge. I'm getting bored up here. And when I get bored, I generally start doing dumb things. There goes an assist on the AI there. And he's disappeared. So I'm going to decide to just YOLO. Let's go down this cliff. I know it's not necessarily safe right here, but the enemy don't have many more tanks. And actually, the second I start going down, I was like, oh no, there's so many targets. No. And my driver eats it. Good thing I didn't flip over. But the driver ate it, which means I'm going to have to wait for him to get back up, or someone to take over his position. I guess it's not advised for tanks to drop off of however tall cliffs those are. We're going to get our way up this little incline. And there's a Tiger 2H over there. Lovely target to shoot at. Gonna get over the cliff. Get over the little ridge. Shoot him. I went for the lower plate there. Hit his transmission, but didn't do enough to set him on fire. And he gets knocked out, though, and we get a healthy little assist for it. Just a AI over there. Very rare undamaged. That was a little weird. But the enemy are thoroughly on their back foot. We're going to win this pretty handily. We have 2 cap zones. We're pushing in on the 3rd. Seems like the enemy are mainly in plains. But I'm going to run out over here and kind of look for that that last heavy tank we spotted. I'm pretty sure he's already knocked out, but never pays to not go looking. You should always go look, especially at the end of the game when that could be the difference between getting, you know, a really great game and maybe an average game. But yeah, when this tank loses its engine or transmission or whatever I've lost on it, it's not the best. It's a little slow. Primarily because it is a heavier tank. But we win. Yay! And I primarily wanted to show that replay just so you guys didn't have to only see Carpathians. I don't even like Carpathians that much. It was just the map where I got the 2 replays I felt best demonstrated the tank. But healthy little reward. So let's move on to the final opinion, shall we? Alright, so opinion time. What do I think of the Jumbo? This is by far one of the most fun tanks I've played. I'm just going to tell you that straight up. I think the combination of armor and general mobility, it's not the fastest tank, it's not the most maneuverable tank, it's certainly not a medium tank with all this extra armor on it. But it's fast enough to keep up with the charge. It has great armor for its tier, and the gun is really, really good once you get the right ammo in it. It deals with tigers, which is the big thing when you have a tank that can see tigers, is does it deal with them? Yes, it does. Deals with Panthers nicely. It can deal with tanks that are sort of above its, sort of that bat above it, in the sense that, you know, Tiger 2Hs, you can deal with those things in this. It's a little more difficult, but you can certainly do it. It's just a very solid all-rounder tank that's, in my opinion, maybe slightly above average in most categories and maybe slightly below average in a couple others. If we want to talk about what makes a good tank, well, a good gun. It has a pretty good gun. With the M93 shot, I think this gun is really good. It has good armor. Yes, it has great armor from the front, and the side armor is thick enough that you can angle it and help make that front armor even thicker. Okay, so that's 2 things it's got. Maneuverability. Suffers a little bit in maneuverability department. It's not the fastest, and it generally is a little more sluggish than other Shermans, but it's good enough. It's adequate. It's average. It's fine. And then just, I don't know what the 4th category would be. What would the 4th category be? Fun level? It's really fun. Honestly, there wasn't a game I played in this tank where I didn't have fun driving it. It It just ticked all the boxes for me. This is just one of those tanks that I really like. So maybe I'm a little bit biased, but I think it's 100% worth the grind to get it. It's just a really, really, really potent tank. Very good tank. I wouldn't be that surprised if they upgrade its battle rating, but I really hope they don't, because at 5.7, I think it's found its home. I think it's appropriate for this tank to be at 5.7. To make it any higher, don't know. It won't see any stiffer let's say it was made into a 6.0. Doesn't really see any stiffer competition than it does at the moment. So why do it? Why not just leave it at a 5.7? It's appropriate in my opinion. Because if you go too high, this thing will become useless. The armor just won't be effective anymore. If it sees Tiger 2H's all day long, this armor won't be quite as much fun. But Tigers and Panthers all day long, this armor can deal with it. So I really, really like this tank. It fits the Sherman design philosophy in the sense that it wants to go forward, it wants to engage, it wants to attack. But it's generally all around just a very solid tank. It's the main thing I liked about this tank is it's very reliable. When I'm angled like this and I'm taking shots from the front, directly in front of me, I know I'm safe. The only way I'm going to get knocked out is if they have a very high penetration APCR, or they knock out my gun they hit my gun right before I fire and my own gun knocks out my crew. That's how I'm going to get knocked out. The only times I've been knocked out in the front was a very lucky shot from a Panther firing APCR that clipped my ammo rack right here. And then you saw on the replay getting hit in the side right through here by a Tiger. That did me in. Most of the time this tank doesn't get knocked out. It's very tough. If you play it semi-conservatively, you don't want to be running around everywhere. You want to keep your enemies to the front, but you can engage them at much closer ranges than most Shermans. So this one gets my seal of approval. It's a tank that I will always play. I'll probably play this tank every single day. Just as I haven't played the Jumbo yet today. I'll play it. And then I'm pretty sure I'll always have fun doing it. So, net opinion, very fun. It's durable, it's maneuverable enough, has a pretty good gun. Not great, but above average. Armor's good. The front is great. The side is very usable. And speed, maybe average to slightly below average, but good enough. So I hope you find this review helpful. I hope you learned something. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, put them in the comment section below. I'll be more than happy to read them and respond and answer any questions you might have. In terms of future reviews, I plan on doing the Porsche Tiger. I'm working on it. That'll probably be the next review I do. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. I've been Corny Swiss, and I'll see you next time.